So we'll go ahead and open up Work Together 1-3. Just turned it on if you refresh if it's not there. When we look at Work Together 1-3, we can see our accounting equation looks very similar to what I just did on the board with you in the fact that we have our accounts classifications on the top. Again, remember the word assets, liabilities, and owner's equity are classifications. An account can only have one classification. So if I say supplies, you're like, okay, Mrs. Grassel says that we own it and it has value, so it's an asset. So supplies classification would be an asset. Looking at our directions, it says, write the answers to the following problem below. Your instructor will guide you to the following example. Place a plus in the appropriate column if the account is increased. Place a minus in the appropriate column if the account is decreased. And then we have transactions 1 through 5. So they're not giving us a value. We just have to go through and put our pluses or minuses. So the first transaction, receive cash from sales. Who wants to try that one? That's one that I just did on the board. Want to give it a whirl? Do we have more or less of it? I agree. So we're going to put a plus. Yes, awesome. Put a plus in the cash. More capital. And what one of those words up there? We don't have to put it on there, but revenue, expense, or withdrawal. Great. Again, that's not part of this assignment, but it will be on the next one. Number 2, sold services on account to Bowman Company. Dylan, you want to try that one? Excellent. Which one would it be on capital? Which one of those words? Excellent. Thank you, Dylan. Number 3, paid cash for telephone bill. Preston, you want to try that one? Okay. And what would the word be we would associate with telephone bill? Expense. Something that we have to pay for the business, but we don't necessarily charge back to the customer. Number 4, receive cash on account from Bowman Company. Chris. So does the amount that Bowman Company owe us go up or down? Down. So Bowman Company is going to go down. The overall amount that the value of what they owe us is going to go down. And number 5, paid cash to owner for personal use. Michelle? Number 5, paid cash to owner for personal use. And what would be the word that we would associate with the negative one in capital? The other one, the W word, withdrawal. So when an owner takes it out, and here's the reason being, when we go through and look at what happens to our business, overall at the end of our fiscal period, and a fiscal period is a length of time that we go through to decide whether or not we've made money or lost money. And a fiscal period could be a month, it could be a year, it could be a quarter. When we look at that, we could say, you know what, we would have been profitable except the owner took out $10,000 of the business. Does that mean the business is doing something wrong? No. So we use a classification called a withdrawal so we can keep track of, hey, the business is doing awesome. The owner just needs to stop taking out drywall, for example. Right? And because if it wasn't for the owner, we would have been doing awesome. So you don't necessarily need to make any changes to our business policy or procedures. We just got to talk to the owner. Sound good? So if you did not do the on your own part, go ahead and try that on your own. All right. I'm assuming you're done with the on your own. I have a lot of extra talking. I just turned on a whole bunch of stuff for you. Some of them are a little bit more confusing, so let's walk through it. I turned on application 1-3. Okay. So when I click on application 1-3, you will notice it's very similar to application 1-2. How we go through and complete it will be very similar, except I want to point something out. And if you don't do this, you're gonna get docked and lose a lot of points. Remember, look at the very bottom here. Can I have eyes up here? You're going to rush through, and then you're going to make mistakes, and then you're going to be mad at yourself. I'm trying to help. That's my job. I like to be a helper. Instructions. For each transaction, complete the following. One is given for you. Analyze the transaction, determine which accounts in the accounting equation are affected. Remember, double entry accounting, we're going to be always affecting 2 accounts. What 2 accounts are there? That's your first question when you read a transaction. Figure that out. Your second thing, write the amount in the appropriate column using a plus or a minus if the account decreases. Okay? So we know in the transaction line we have to make sure we use a plus or a minus. If you don't do that, it will mark it wrong for you, won't it? Just saying. Letter C, for transactions that affect owner's equity, write in parentheses the description of the transaction to the right of the amount. Okay? So we've been talking about we have revenue, we have expenses, and we have withdrawals. The other one that we didn't talk about that we did in 1-1 is when the owner takes money out of their personal pocket and puts it into the business, that is called an investment. Okay, so that's the other way. There are 4 ways that we will affect owner's equity. 2 make it go up, 2 make it go down. The 2 that make it go up is a revenue and an investment. The 2 that make it go down, expense, and a withdrawal. So if you know that you're affecting owner's equity and it's making it go up, you have 1 or 2 choices, revenue or an investment. Okay? So you have to make sure anytime that you're affecting owner's equity, you have to put in parentheses afterwards how it's affecting it, which one of those words. And letter E then, before going on to the next transaction, or excuse me, D, calculate the new balance, and then E, make sure that your accounting equation is in balance. So the only thing that's different from yesterday is the fact that you need to make sure that you put those words after it, and 1 is done for you as an example. I turned on something else, though, also. Can you just pause a moment? Then I'll give you work time, I promise. I also turned on your study guide. Your study guide is from the reading of the chapter. Can you have eyes up here, please? I'll give you time. I'll adjust time. Breathe. It's okay. When you go to your study guide, there are 4 pages here. Page 1 is identifying the accounting terms. It's worth 22 points. You have page 2 is accounting concepts, transaction that affected the accounting equation, and part 4 is transaction affecting owner's equity in the accounting equation. So when I look at part 1 here, what you're going to see is this truly is based on the reading of the book that I've asked you to go through and do. So here we have the vocabulary terms on the left and the numbers on the right. So they want to know, number 1, planning, recording, analyzing, interpreting financial information. You have to figure out which word it is. Do you see right there it says P6? Guess where the answer is? Page 6. You'll go through and use these. Will you use each word more than once? No. Okay. So I'm going to go on to page 2. Page 2 is, on this study guide, true and false. Do you see where it gives you P6, P10? Hello, Captain Obvious. Use your book. Got her? So that's what page 2 is, 18 points, true and false. You have to read and interpret information from there. Now, page 3 and 4 here is going to be going through, and in this example, you're just using your pluses and minuses. You don't have to put in the amount or calculate the balances. Page 4 here, the very last page for your study guide, is exactly the same. You're going to go through and decide if each account is increased or decreased based on those transactions. Part 4 here is going to be the ones that we just learned about today, where we have our revenue and our expenses affecting more owner's equity. Part 3 will not have that. Okay. One last thing that I want to show you, then really I'll let you work. Thank you for being patient. Even though I can't see Jordan's eyes, it makes me sad. Thank you, Jordan. Or Michelle, I see the back of her head. She's Snapchatting. Mastery problem. Okay. Remember I talked about when we looked at the book, we have application problems, mastery problems, and challenge problems. Application problems is really an assignment on a small part of the book. So when you work on application 1-3, it is really an assignment just focusing on what you learned in 1-3. Now 1-4 here doesn't say application, it says mastery. That means this will use everything from the whole chapter. Does that make sense? Make sure you read and follow the directions on that. This is not due until 10:15 tomorrow because I kind of have them staggered. If we need to adjust, what time are we out of here? 10:30. I'll adjust the application problem 1-3 to be due at 9:45. So some of you may need to work on it outside of class, but I'll give a little bit of class time to answer questions. But don't go to me and say I didn't have enough time to get it done in class tomorrow. Sound good? A little bit of homework. And the other things you can work on in class as well.